Croatia, Houston, oh, Texas, California, Hungary. Oh my goodness. This is an international crew. We tend to have a really big international crew on these ones. Okay, we'll just wait for maybe 1 or 2 more minutes. How are you guys feeling about being here today? Just let me know. What was it that you were hoping? What kind of brought you? What was it that, I always go through the questions that you answer when you sign up. It gives me a good indication of kind of what you're working with, what you're maybe wanting for yourself. But let me know a little bit of, what are you hoping? If you were going to leave with something today, what would that be for yourself? Just a little more info as I wait for my circumstances to allow me to buy my program. Oh, okay, Elaine. I'm here for it. This is, all this helpful stuff. And there's another option as well. I do have my $22 workshop. It will be going up, but it's $22, and that is the self-esteem in your nervous system. It really gives you a ton, and there's a little workbook that comes with it. So that is an option. Obviously, it does not have the framework of the Befriending Your Parts framework. Okay, how to move out of activation, alarm, and freeze. Huge. So the freeze response, as you may or may not know, is very much linked to shame. Okay, so when we experience shame, especially for a long period of time, our system will go into that freeze state, right? Where we feel like we lose motivation, we feel like we're going through the motions, but nobody's home. And that's a huge piece of the self-esteem and why they're so interrelated. So let's dive in. I'm going to share my screen. So 3 core strategies to heal your self-esteem and come out of survival mode. And these are, as you may or may not know, the 3 strategies that are in my signature framework, the Befriending Your Parts framework. And so what I'm about to share with you, and I want to be really clear on this, is not about thinking differently or just loving yourself more. This is about what's really going on in your body, in your brain, in the parts of you that learned to protect you. And so these 3 core strategies for healing your self-esteem and coming out of survival mode are these 3 pieces: nervous system regulation, parts work, specifically internal family systems, which is a specific form of parts work, and self-compassion. And when you weave them together, I like to say magical, but it's extremely effective for what it can do for you. The reason we want to do this is because you want to be able to feel safe in your body. You want to be able to trust yourself. You want to be your own friend, and you want to be able to show up in your life, in your relationships, in your workplace with confidence. And so I've really seen this, I call it the trio, right? Change hundreds of clients and students' lives. And I'm also living proof that it works. And so, hi, if you don't know me already, many of you I've had conversations with in the DMs and Instagram. I'm Chantal. A few things to know about me. I'm a therapist. I've been a therapist for 20 years. And the reason I feel like this is really important is not to say, yay me, even though I'm very proud of the work that I've done over the last 2 decades. It's just that in order to really know what you're talking about, especially in a world where online, this coaching industry is just becoming an industry where people with no experience are trying to sell you stuff, right? Or trying to tell you what to do. I'm coming from 20 years of experience. I'm coming from research-backed, evidence-based practices that actually truly work. But I'm also a human being that had my own challenges with self-esteem. I've had extremely high inner critics, the highest levels of anxiety that I could think possible, and nervous system dysregulation. It was destroying my life. And so this is me at 11. And what I was dealing with at that time already was perfectionism, really strong inner critics, super high anxiety. I was starting to really caretake for everybody. I felt there was a lot going on around me, and I could feel the emotions of people, and I felt responsible for others' emotions at a very young age. I had this anxious attachment. Like I felt like somewhere it was my need to make things okay, and I was constantly fearful of people leaving. I became fearful of people dying. That was my childhood. Even though there were beautiful, beautiful moments and lots of good, this was my internal world. And the truth is, my system didn't have the capacity, even though I would ask the questions, how are you? Are you okay? And I would get the honest answer that my system did not have the capacity to take in, to handle, to know what to do with. And so what it ended up doing was just strengthening the perfectionism, the inner critics, the anxiety, the caretaking, and feeling responsible for other people's emotions. And so I share this because I did a lot of healing. I literally tried everything. And there were a lot of missing pieces in my healing. Back in the day when I became a therapist, talk therapy was everything, right? And so the pieces that were really missing was nervous system regulation, parts work, and the self-compassion work. And I want to say today, I don't struggle with an inner critic. I haven't really even had an inner criticky thought in probably about 5 or 6 years. There's no perfectionism except when I cut my hair. And there's no anxious attachment. My relationships are all really secure. And today, I've been able to do this work not because a special person. There's nothing special about me. It's because I found those three pieces that put together really changed my life. And I want to be really clear because today, and I say this probably because I've just seen such a shift with social media now and chat GBT and all of these AI, artificial intelligence, is where people can create programs in 2 seconds. This is not what this is. This is based on working with hundreds and hundreds of people, things that are backed on research. And when I was trying to create and develop these three core strategies and the befriending your parts, which I'll talk to you a little bit later about, I went through every single one of my files. I was trying to look at, okay, what was working, what didn't. I went with what the research was saying. And that's where the befriending your parts framework really came from. It's really required to have an integrative approach to healing because you are a human being with a body, a brain, you have emotions, you have thoughts, you have relationships with other humans, you have a nervous system. And there are these parts of you that are trying to protect you. There's also parts of you that have been hurt. And it sounds really complicated, but when you understand yourself in this way and you learn that every single one of these, they all fit together, this is how you learn to work with yourself. And so what I ended up coming up with in terms of the befriending your parts framework was there's these pieces that are really required for healing that really help nervous system regulation, parts work, and self-compassion work. And of course, a few other goodies that I've picked up along the way. And that's what ended up creating the befriending your parts framework. And so first off, every single presentation, if you've ever been to a webinar of mine before, I like to go over what is self-esteem. Self-esteem is how you feel about yourself. It is your subjective experience of yourself and of your worth. And I want to be clear that your self-esteem doesn't come from you deciding, making a conscious decision not to like yourself, or come from the fact that you're actually not deserving of love and you're not good enough. That's not where it comes from. Your self-esteem is really complex, right? It's how you feel about all the different parts of yourself. And your inner critics love, absolutely love to judge all the parts of you that aren't keeping up, that aren't doing enough, and that aren't deemed lovable enough. And what ends up happening is your system ends up having a lot of inner conflict, right? There's parts of you battling with one another. You might feel this already, and you can put in the chat if this is something that you experience, drop a heart. If you feel like there's this inner conflict all the time and it feels like there's wars happening within your body, this inner conflict, what it ends up doing is creating a felt sense of danger in your system. Your survival brain and your nervous system perceive conflict as danger. And so the work is really to create this inner balance or harmony. And this is what that looks like. So when you have inner harmony or balance, you're in safety mode, not survival mode. You can feel like your true self, like who you truly are, is leading. Your parts are not driving. So the inner critic is taking a really long nap, and you feel safe in your body and in your environment. Sounds pretty nice. And it's also really possible. You may be thinking and coming here today because you want to love yourself. You want to come out of survival mode, right? But you don't just want to love yourself or come out of survival mode. You want what that will give you. You want the ability to feel good just being yourself, to stop overthinking and spiraling. You want to be able to feel seen and visible without going into the spiral of self-doubt. You want to be able to rest without guilt. You want to be able to speak up without fear. You want to show up in your relationships. You want to show up at work without constantly questioning yourself. You want freedom. right? Freedom from the inner critic, the anxiety, the loneliness, the sadness, the insecurity, the shame spirals, the rumination, the shutdown. Does that resonate for you? That you're here because you want freedom? Drop a heart if that's resonating for you. Yeah. So let's take a moment to imagine what it would feel like to feel better, just for a moment. And I chose this kid because I could eat him up. He's so cute. So let's take a moment and just imagine what it would feel like. Maybe even close your eyes and just imagine what would it feel like if your inner critic wasn't driving, if you weren't stuck in survival mode, if you felt good about yourself, if you could show up somewhere and not have to overthink what you say and what you do, if you could leave social interactions and feel confident. What would that feel like? And just imagine that. Maybe just even imagine like the weight of all of that being taken off just for a moment. Yeah. I would leave my apartment more and not make excuses for staying in. I would say yes to most invites. I would feel more hopeful in my life, being more vibrant. Oh my God, I hear you. I hear you. I feel like you're speaking from where I was at one point, right? Yeah, comfort, eat less, pursue your dreams. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. And you might even notice for yourself if there was a part of you that was not even able to imagine that because it feels so foreign. For once, I would feel at home, safe, like I belong. Yeah, so true. Okay. So just take a moment. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you ask yourself, what do I want for myself? Some of you are already going there, right? What's the first thing that comes? I feel comfortable about myself. Yeah. Yeah. That's the biggest wish I could have for any of you, right? Is how I'm able to show up the way I do now, where I don't have any anxiety right now. I can just do a presentation that I have not prepared, saying it over 10, 15 times. I haven't even said it over once. I just knew what I wanted to say. I'd live fully, yeah, and engage more in the world and figure out what I enjoy and find and know my intuition. Yes, I would be more relaxed in social encounters and not just become so exhausted by people pleasing. Yeah, inner confidence, peace, self-trust, a life where I want to enjoy without guilt. Yeah, to be my authentic self with my own belief system and associating other individual beliefs with my own. Oh my goodness. Yes. 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 All of this. Yes to all of this. So let's talk about what's keeping you stuck. So mindset work doesn't stick. We hear a lot about mindset. When you go on social media, I'm really grateful today that there's more on nervous system regulation. Now, I'm very mindful, obviously, coming from the position where I'm coming from, that there's a lot of misinformation out there as well. But I am happy that there's at least awareness around nervous system regulation, around parts work and recognizing the part of you, and everybody's now talking about a part of me is, and I love this, but there's way too much on mindset, right? It's all about change your mind, just think positively and everything will be better. Unfortunately, mindset work doesn't stick when you're in survival mode. Parts of you want to think, yet the work is always to feel. And most of us try to think our way out of something our system doesn't feel safe to feel. And so healing for you might not actually feel safe to your system. There may be parts of you that are deeply afraid of healing, and there are likely parts of you fearful of releasing the grip. Your inner critic likely doesn't want to loosen its grip because it feels it needs to shame you forward, or else you will fail, you will get rejected, you will be abandoned. Your survival brain, your nervous system, and the protector parts of you are likely running the show, and they believe they're keeping you safe. And the truth is, when there's shame, this leads to shutdown. So research has really shown and backed this, that shame literally shuts your brain down from being able to create anything new or to be able to rewire any old patterns. So what ends up happening is we just strengthen the anxiety patterns, the shame patterns, the shutdown patterns, and they get stronger and stronger and stronger. And so, how does healing happen? Before we dive into each option, let's just break this down for a minute. When you're trying to heal low self esteem, what I have found, and the research thankfully does back this up, we need to first learn to regulate the nervous system and create a felt sense of safety. Then you want to be able to create consistent experiences of this felt safety so that you're rewiring your system for connection instead of protection. And then gently explore and rewire the parts of you that are overly protective, like your inner critics, right? When they're no longer actually needed to be that strongly wired. And you want to rewire the parts of you that carry these old stories, the pain, the shame. And then you want to learn the in-depth steps of self-compassion because it's a very complex skill. And even myself had been a therapist for so many years until I did and learned the in-depth tools through compassion focused therapy and kind of recognize, oh my goodness, I've kind of been doing it wrong, right? So you have that felt sense of safety to always return to because that's what self-compassion will give you, and we'll be able to take a look at that. And I want to give you the steps to building long-lasting self-esteem in a nutshell. And this is what we do in the Befriending Your Parts framework that I'll tell you a little bit more about at the end. The first step is always nervous system regulation. Okay. It's always to create a felt sense of safety. And then we want to learn to understand your protector parts, right? Like your inner critic, like the parts of you that get anxious, the parts of you that might fight or shut down or people please. We want to learn to connect you to your true self, to get to know who that is, to get to know how to come back to that, because that is going to be your key to healing, is being able to learn to connect to that true self that's going to help heal all the other parts of you that need it. Then you want to learn to work with your inner critic and other protective parts. So we always want to then come back to that true self, to learn to work with the inner critic, to take it out of the extreme role it's in. I'm going to be going into all of this in more detail in a moment. Then you want to build the skills of self-compassion. Now notice that self-compassion is step 5, even though it's a huge part of your true self, even though it's a part of nervous system regulation. Oftentimes your system is so resistant. If we just jump to self-compassion, there are parts of you that are not going to buy it. There are parts of you that may not be ready for it. So when we actually get to the deep, deep skills, your system has done all of these pieces to be like, yes, let me take this in. And then you want to be able to heal the self-esteem wounds, these younger parts, right? These parts of us that really need care and nurture. And there's really specific tools on how to do this. And again, when we go to heal the self-esteem wounds, which is often a major challenge with traditional talk therapy, is that talk therapy will just jump into the wounds. Let's talk about it. Let's go deep into it. And what you notice is all of your protection mechanisms, your protector parts, they just get louder and louder and louder because they need to protect. We have just poked at a wound without actually working with the ways you've learned to protect yourself from those wounds, like your inner criticism or anxiety or shutdown first. Those are the first pieces to address. So let's look at nervous system regulation. So this is the first approach that I want to address with you. So the commonly held belief here is, if I just thought more positively, I'd be better. It's my fault that I tell myself mean things, right? Likely your inner critic talking. I just need to push through. These are literal sentences that I've heard countless, countless, countless times. So when these are the sentences, this is really your system in a place of protection, okay? And the truth is, healing happens when your survival brain and your nervous system feels safe, not just when your thoughts change, not when you push through, because that actually is you in survival mode, okay? And not when you do more. That again is you in survival mode. Remember, you have a complex system. And so you want to learn to work with your system. That's what healing is. Now, CBT, many of you have probably heard of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. This used to be the top therapy. Change how you think, change the thoughts. This is going to change how you feel, and this is going to change how you act. This will make you think better thoughts. But I want you to think about it this way. I want you to think of the thoughts like the leaves on the tree. Now, if you're noticing that the leaf is browning, And you just go to try to cut off the browning of that tree and say, oh, there we go, fixed. Do you think that leaf is going to be okay? Do you think the tree is fine? Because it's not addressing the branches, the roots. It's not addressing whether there's enough sun or soil. It's just trying to say, okay, let's bypass all of that and just focus on this leaf because this is what I'm noticing. I can see the leaf. I can't see the roots. I can't see the amount of sun and I can't see the quality of the soil. An integrative approach is going to look at all of these things. And this is why we really need this integrative approach. Okay, because I'm going to show you this diagram here. The thoughts are usually the first thing we notice. We'll notice our thoughts, especially if you're a person who tends to live in your head, and that might be your survival response. You think. Okay. But we have to understand how thoughts come to be. First, we have emotional wounds. These may be attachment wounds, the way we learn to connect with other humans. And then this leads to self-esteem wounds. It impacts how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about ourselves in relationships, how we feel about ourselves in the world, what we believe we're capable of doing. And so then there's triggers. Our life becomes a series of triggers that activate our threat system. We go into survival mode and we have survival responses. We have a series of survival responses. Maybe that is a flight response, a fawn response, like a people-pleasing response, a shutdown response. And each one of those responses is sort of like these protector parts, right? We might have a people-pleasing part, an inner critic part, a numbing part. And those protector parts have thoughts that come with them, right? So your protectors think, your inner critic has thoughts, and then you notice the thought. And you're like, oh, I'll work with the thought. But if I just work with a thought, that's not me working with the protector part. It's not working with the survival responses underneath it. And it's not working with the fact that I've been in survival mode, and it's certainly not addressing the wound that's creating all of this. So let's look at an example of this, because let's say you have these wounds, and let's say, therefore, when a friend doesn't text you back, you might have a fight or a freeze response. And so then an inner critic part comes out to play, and you notice the mean thoughts. There's these mean thoughts happening. Just trying to change the thoughts isn't going to address the challenge. And that's why we see it's an integrative approach, because your nervous system is all about assessing, am I safe or am I in danger? Is this for war or is there threat? Because your nervous system and survival brain are constantly in communication with each other, sending messages. Is this safe or is this dangerous, right? And back in the day, we had mountain lions, but today that mountain lion might be a weird look. Your boss sending a message that says urgent, someone not texting you back, leaving you, what they call, the young people say, leaving you on red, right? A conflict with someone where maybe you said something or someone else said something hurtful. Your system subconsciously records what's reward or safety, what's threat or danger, to try to keep you safe, so that your system automatically knows what's safe and what's dangerous. And so your system stores as memory what equals safety and what equals danger. And here's how the nervous system sorts the world. So often your system learns as safe stuff that might be harmful to you, actually, like people pleasing or perfectionism, or staying silent, or bracing for impact, waiting for the other shoe to drop, fixing others, anticipating needs, trying to fix yourself all the time, not needing anything yourself, being productive, shutting down your emotions, appeasing others to avoid conflict, raising your voice to be heard. And what it might have learned is dangerous, even when it's healthy, are things like rest, saying no, expressing your needs, feeling joy, setting boundaries, taking up space, being visible, asking for help, slowing down when your body needs it, not doing anything, quote unquote, useful. Trusting in others might feel really dangerous, or trusting in yourself might feel dangerous. Raising your voice in anger. Now, if you notice, I put raising your voice on both sides, because your system, depending on what your experiences have been, may have learned that raising your voice is the only way to be heard, so it's safe. Or your system may have learned that raising your voice, showing anger, leads to bad things, danger. So I'm going to get you to think for a moment, what has your system learned is safe? What is your system learned is dangerous? And feel free to put that in the chat for a moment, and we can just take a moment to look at that. And I'm just going to answer this while we're here. I understand it is a bottom-up approach. Yep, that affirmations can work. Feeling in a different state. It is a state that also changes thoughts and emotions. All of this information can be much. What I want to be really mindful of is that we do still work with thoughts. We do still work. It's a part of parts work. So it's just not only working with just thoughts, because that's a piece of the puzzle. It's just not the whole puzzle. Does that make sense? Yeah. So you still have to address what that inner critic voice is saying, or what that anxious voice is saying, but we're just learning to address it in a completely different way. So when you learn to work with that part and you learn to offer it the nurture, it's a very different approach of doing it that actually is way more effective. Safe, being compliant, not answering back, being like, yes, there's so much here, right? There's so much. Intimacy has felt dangerous. Yes, 100%. And we're going to talk about that a little bit in a moment here. So let's move on. So what we want to be able to do is rewire the subconscious wiring so that what is healthy for you feels safe, and what is not healthy for you feels dangerous, plain and simply. I talk a lot about the prefrontal cortex. I haven't talked about it as much recently, but let's just put this here. If you've come to any one of my workshops, this slide is always in there. As an integrative trauma therapist, healing equals keeping your prefrontal cortex online as much as possible. This is your logic brain. It allows you to see the larger picture, to have perspective, to have curiosity, to have compassion. It's your executive functioning. It has access to your true self. So this is how you access it. Now, on the other hand, your amygdala, that's your smoke detector. It's your fire alarm. It's what activates your threat system. It's what all the information kind of goes there for it to decide, am I in danger or potential danger? And your survival brain and nervous system will always prioritize threat, potential threat over truth, fear over logic, every single time. Because it's better to be safe than sorry, right? If there's a potential mountain lion or a mountain lion, am I going to just say, nah, I'm just going to stay here in suntan? Probably not. We're going to activate the threat system. And so what ends up happening is when the amygdala goes, danger, danger, and the fire alarm starts ringing, you don't have access to self. You're going to have protective parts that start coming out, and your prefrontal cortex shuts down. So you shut down the logic brain, the executive functioning shuts down. And this is very primal. It's because in those moments when there's potential mountain lion or a mountain lion, you don't want to have this capacity to be like, let me look at all my options. You want to go based on instinct, survival mechanisms. And so this is what we end up getting stuck in a lot of the time when we are dealing with self-esteem wounds, where we are going based on survival instincts and we don't have access to the larger picture to be able to really have perspective. And you want your prefrontal cortex online as much as possible. That's my face, by the way, in my forehead on the screen, just to show my true self, right? The more the prefrontal cortex is online, the more you stay at a survival mode. So they are really, your amygdala and your prefrontal cortex work in opposition. So if my danger is firing, my prefrontal cortex goes offline. If my prefrontal cortex is online, my amygdala is going to go offline. So I'm going to go out of survival mode. This is why it's so important. And there are a few ways to do this. The two magic emotions, curiosity and compassion. Now, we go into this in great detail, both in my little course that I have, the $22 course that you can reach out to me later about, and also in the Befriending Your Parts Framework. These two emotions keep your prefrontal cortex online when you get curious and when you're compassionate. So let's just briefly explain the nervous system ladder. So This is a ladder to kind of explain the kind of lines of the states of your nervous system and what will happen. So when you're in a regulated state, your nervous system is saying, I am safe. I'm cool, calm, collected. The first line of defense is going to be to go into sympathetic. That's going to be your mobilization. The body gets mobilized to run, to fight, to attach, cry to somebody, right? And if your nervous system could talk, it would say, I'm in danger. I need to be mobilized for action. Now, the next line of defense, and this is often called the defense of last resort, is going to be the shutdown state. If your nervous system could talk, it would say, I need to conserve my body's energy and shut down. There's no way out of this, right? This is all happening subconsciously, autonomically. You are not choosing this. This is your autonomic nervous system that is, and survival brain that is making these calls for you subconsciously. And when you're dealing with self-esteem wounds, you're probably going to be living in that little oval shape there in the sympathetic, in the shutdown, or in that freeze state that is a combination of both the sympathetic and the shutdown, where you might feel both anxious and immobilized, and where you feel like you're going through the motions, but you go, crash, go, crash. And you feel like you kind of have the capacity to get what you need to get done some of the time, but then you feel like you have this voice that's just like, I can't, it's too much. And Deb Dana really explains the nervous system so powerfully because your nervous system is brilliant because it really is picking up on all this information from within your body, from around you in your environment, and from between you and other humans' nervous systems that are communicating with one another. And we are relational beings. So it's really important to understand that as humans, we are wired for connection. So your sense of safety, your self-worth, even how you treat yourself is going to be shaped through relationships and thus through connection. And so your self-esteem is shaped by how you learned to connect, firstly, primarily with others, and then with yourself. And so your attachment, this is where attachment, and some of you might know about attachment theory. We really work through attachment wounds in the Befriending Your Parts framework. It is huge. It is the root of self-esteem challenges. Your attachment is how safe you feel to connect with others, right? And this starts at birth and it continues throughout your life. That's me with my little pup, Finn, who is my little attachment baby. I love him with all my heart. Your attachment is shaped by many things, from early relationships to life experiences to what your nervous system has learned about connection, right? Is connection safe? Is it not safe? Does it lead to pain? Does it end up with me getting hurt or hurting someone else? And for many of us, our autonomic nervous systems have been wired for protection instead of connection due to being stuck in survival mode and having these emotional self-esteem wounds, right? Deb Dana says this so well. We get wired for protection instead of connection. And so your nervous system has learned to navigate relationships based on past experiences in relationships. And so it isn't just about who you're with right now, what kinds of relationships you have in front of you. It's about what your system has learned to expect in connection. So going back to what I was saying before, to expect pain. Am I going to get rejected? Am I going to feel abandoned? Am I going to hurt someone else? Or are they going to hurt me? Can I trust them? Are they going to betray me? Right? Does this resonate? Drop a heart if this is resonating for you. And so what ends up happening is we can often end up in protection mode, right? Where this really disconnects you from yourself and others. When you are in protection mode, it's literally that brick wall that's going to place that disconnection to keep you safe. Because after all, the purpose of protection mode, like survival mode, is survival. It's not connection. In fact, connection might feel like a threat to your safety, depending on what your experiences have been. And so my clients and students in the Befriending Your Parts framework often come to me wanting to talk and not feel. You probably can relate to this, right? Feeling is hard, right? And so it's either to kind of talk about it or just think in your head about it, but actually learning to feel is really hard. And so it takes time to learn to connect, right, to emotions, parts, and bodies, right? And when they learn how to do this, their internal experience changes. They reconnect. And healing means helping your system feel safe enough to reconnect. In a nutshell, to move into a place of connection instead of protection. So, if it's okay for you, I'm going to get you just the most basic thing I can teach you right now is just the hand on heart. This is probably the most powerful act of reconnection. And if it doesn't feel safe to go into your body, I'm just going to get you to notice the warmth beneath your hand and just stay with that warmth. What's happening when we place a hand on our chest is this releasing oxytocin. It's literally the love hormone, the connection hormone into your body. It's helping to regulate your system. Now, maybe even notice right now if there's resistance, if there's a part of you that doesn't feel safe with this. Instead of pushing through, note it. Say, okay, there's a part of me right now that's really resisting. Okay, that's okay. You might try for a moment saying this is safe, but if it feels like too much, hand can come off. We're not pushing through. We're learning to work with your system. Yeah, Hannah used to have resistance when you did this, but now it's comfortable. Amazing. Amazing. Yeah. You will notice with me, if you watch enough of my videos and I'm reading testimonials or something emotional from someone, I will have my hand going to my chest. It just happens automatically for me right now. So let me know in the chat, drop a heart if that feels soothing in any way for you. And let's move on to parts work. We're going to come back to that and add to it a little bit as we go. Oh, you felt sad and thought of toddler you, and then you stopped to take notes, recognizing you were resisting. Oh, yes, there's going to be so many parts that resist this. And this is the work to learn to work with those parts too, which is why we're here at Parts Work, right? Internal family systems. So let's dive in. This is what we tend to hear. I need to silence the inner critic. There are parts of me I don't like. I just want to make this go away. I'm just so angry at myself. So I have literally taken these sentences. I often just write down these powerful sentences that my clients and students say, and I just note them so that I can use them in moments like this and also reflect them back to my students when they've kind of reached a new threshold. And then they can go back and be like, oh my goodness, I've come so far, right? These are protection, right? These are literally parts talking. This is not your true self. This is the protection armor. Because the problem with traditional talk therapy and other approaches is they teach you to not pay attention to parts of you, like your inner critic, and instead to shut it down and or to suppress it or to bypass it and just put something positive in place of it. But these will say that this doesn't work. Because the biggest misunderstanding in healing is that we're always trying to fix, suppress, or get rid of the hard parts of us. And the paradox is that these parts, the parts of you that feel pain, fear, shame, anger, they don't need to be fixed. They just want to be seen, heard, and felt. Because we're relational beings, right? We have these internal parts that act really similarly to our external relationships. So just think for a moment what would happen if you said, talk to the hand because the face don't care. I always bring the slide and I love it. I'm a 90s, I was a teenager in the 90s. This was the cool thing, when you're 12, 13, 14, and you're like, talk to the hand because the face don't care. But imagine if you said that to someone in your life who's feeling angry, upset, or judgmental. You're probably going to get a lot of rage. Because if a part of you that's trying to protect you feels it's being dismissed, shut down, or bottled, just like that part in another human being, it's only going to become more of what you don't want. And so when you want to build long-lasting and healthy self-esteem, you really want to get to know all the parts of yourself, the parts you like, especially the parts you don't like. Because the essence of parts work is that you have parts of you that have been hurt, and you have parts of you that have learned to cope with that hurt. either by trying to prevent you from ever feeling that pain again, like your inner critic, or by trying to stop that pain in its tracks, like parts of you that try to numb, addict parts, parts that distract, even overthinking parts that are trying to think your way instead of feeling it. You have parts of you that have been wounded, and you have parts of you that have learned to be super protective. This is just another way of showing this. And in the diagram, you can see, the inner child there, and then all the warriors around trying to protect. And of course, you have a true self. That's the deeper aspect to you that feels true to your values and true to who you are. And you can think of yourself as an embodiment of calm, confidence, trust, wisdom, perspective, curiosity, compassion, and care. So, really, now you start to see how the self in parts work is so deeply connected to your nervous system being regulated, right? It embodies the pieces of regulation that we need. And so healing means learning to connect. And I'm going to say that word again, connection, right? Connect to your true self and build healthy relationships with all parts of yourself. And often the self is likely what you're disconnected from most of, or some of, or all of the time. And like I said before, your self is the key to your healing. And so when we're looking at your true self, this is a picture of me with my boys. I love my boys. And when they bring out, they bring out mama's true self all the time. What are the things that make you you? This is a really great question that I just like to ask you. Now, this is such a small tip of the iceberg aspect of getting to know your true self, but what are the things about the true you that if you took those traits away, you would no longer be you? Because if we took the inner critic away, or the anxious parts away, or the parts of you that shut down, you'd still be you. What are the things about you? Maybe it is your compassion. Maybe it's your care, your sarcastic humor, your love for dogs, your love for moments of beauty in nature, whatever it may be about you. And sometimes it's helpful to think of a time when you felt grounded, right? When you felt more kind of regulated in your nervous system. And if you haven't had moments like that, that's okay too. This is what we learn in the Befriending Your Parts framework, but it might mean that you would benefit from a little bit of deeper work, even though this is going to offer you some things. But when you felt grounded or regulated in your system, what did that feel like for you? What were you like? What did that bring out in you? Because it likely brings out your true self. Vivacious. Oh, I love that. Okay. Believing in goodness in people, humor and goofiness. What if you honestly, and you're raising such a good point. And so just like I said, a lot of us don't learn to access our true self because we've been in survival mode. That makes complete sense. It is actually often really, really common that people don't know who they really are. They're like, I don't know what my true self is. Valid, real place to be. What I love about parts work is it recognizes this is a part of me. It's not all of me. Okay. So it allows you to create that healthy separation so that you can actually connect without being immersed and overwhelmed by these parts of yourself. Because we all have many parts to us. You have protector parts that come out when some part of you feels unsafe, when you're in survival mode. So there's anger parts or anxious parts or people-pleasing parts. There may be inner critics, numbing parts, controlling parts. These are all protective mechanisms. They're protector parts. And your inner critic likely loves to shame on these parts. And I want to be really mindful. There are no bad parts. No bad parts. There are simply parts that get put in extreme roles because of emotional pain you've experienced. And these parts, they did help you at some point. They did. They just no longer help, right? Or maybe a part of you feels you need them, but it's not doing justice, right? Parts make sense with context. They always do. And every part of you, just like every cell in your body and every function of your brain, has a job to do. And it truly believes it's doing that job, like the inner critic. It has good intentions. Its intention is to protect you from rejection, from failure, from disappointing or angering others, from abandonment. And yet it has a really terrible impact. It leads to low self-worth, self-doubt, a lack of self-trust, feeling unmotivated, feeling not enough, high anxiety, social anxiety, disconnection from yourself, stuck in survival mode, stuck in that freeze response, right? There's a heavy list of side effects. And you end up in this negative feedback loop where when you're in survival mode, often your inner critic's going to come out as a protective mechanism. But then when the inner critic is there, it keeps you in survival mode. And then this negative feedback loop just continues and continues and continues. And so it's all about learning to work with your inner critics and other protective parts instead of suppressing them, having them in the driver's seat, getting angry at them, avoiding them, etc. Okay. It's learning to work with these parts. And these are the very specific tools that I teach in the Befriending Your Parts work, in the Befriending Your Parts framework. So my clients and students in the BYP either come to me hating. Now tell me if you resonate this. Do you hate your inner critic or do you love your inner critic? Now we have about 7 different types of inner critics, right? Perfectionist, the inner taskmaster, that's all about getting things done. You have the inner destroyer, that's the worst, the inner controller. There's all these different types of, and how we work with each type is going to be a little bit different based on whatever type it is. But of your inner critics that you've recognized, do you hate them? Do you love them? Because the first step is just kind of noting that, right? Hating or loving, that means you're not grounded in self either way, right? So it's learning to understand them and work with them. Because when you learn to do that, the inner critic softens over time. You learn what it's trying to do, and you learn how to take it out of the extreme role that it's in. Yeah, yeah, right? There's hate. Love the intention. I get it, right? Love the intention. I love the intention, but we also recognize the impact isn't so great. And beneath the protector parts, like your inner critic, there are wounded parts that believe you are not enough, and they fear rejection, failure, abandonment, and getting hurt from others. And there's this implicit memory. This is that subconscious wiring we have. It's the kind of memory that gets stored in your body, your survival brain, and your nervous system. It holds the emotional experiences, especially from the hard experiences you've had in life, to try to keep you safe. It actually stores that way more strongly than the positive experiences so that your system can feel that again and know when something bad is happening. So even if you don't consciously remember it, this is why the body keeps the score, right? It's implicit memory. And there's actually a way to rewire implicit memory, which is all the work we do in the Befriending Your Parts framework. It's also in that $22 offer that I have for self-esteem in your nervous system. And so feeling memories are really about these sort of emotional pangs. It's like emotions that feel like they just come on fast and strong. And it's like, ouch, it feels like a little punch in the gut. And a lot of the time, our unhealed emotional wounds are directing us. So let me explain this. When we go back to this little diagram, okay, when we look at the thoughts that we recognize and we're like, I need to do this. This is what my thought is telling me. That thought is coming from a protector part. That's coming from your survival responses because you're in survival mode, because there's self-esteem wounds that come from unhealed emotional wounds. So we start to see how our unhealed emotional wounds are making and driving a lot of our decisions in life. And so part of healing is really learning to notice effectively. If we're going to take this all down into a nutshell, learning to notice effectively. That's the first piece I want to teach you today. And I'm going to get you to think about how we usually tune in. Because and I even asked you how you felt about your inner critic a moment ago. Sometimes we even feel shame for the inner critic, right? There's an inner critic shaming another inner critic. Normally, when we're noticing things within ourselves, we're going to come at it from the goggles of frustration, the goggles of shame, or the goggles of fear. We're fearful of what this means for me, what's going to bring, what's going to happen. We're really angry at ourselves or maybe at other people for making us feel this way. And so this is normally how we end up tuning in. And so it's kind of like you've been put in a blender with that protector part, right? So maybe you're in the blender with the anger part or with the the inner critic part or the fear part, and you can't tell the difference between what's me and what's the part. It all feels like it's me. It's my thoughts. These are true facts, but it's not. This is called being blended, hence the blender. And so unblending is learning to notice from your true self by accessing curiosity and compassion and coming back into a place of connection. And the first step is always awareness. The second step is curiosity. What do you notice? Can I get curious about what's happening for me right now? How is this part showing up for me? Is it coming through thoughts, sensations? Do I feel any urge in my body to do something or say something? Do I feel any emotions? Are there images, colors, textures? Does this move over time? So this is going to look a lot like mindfulness, but parts work is a little bit more directive. We're really getting focused on specific parts. And what I teach you in the Befriending Your Parts framework is really how to work with the protective parts. You get really specific and how to work and direct and heal those protective parts. Because when you give whatever you're experiencing space, compassion, and safety, it will soften. Healing happens through connection, not protection. We don't want to protect ourselves from ourselves. We want to learn to connect every part of ourselves. And this is why learning how to notice effectively is so important. So let's just take a moment once again, place hand on chest. And just for a moment, tell yourself, if you've noticed a part showing up for you, maybe just notice, is there a part here? Do you notice an inner critic? Is there a part of you shaming you for anything that you're learning here? Is there a part of you feeling overwhelmed by learning this information or listening to this information? And maybe just name that part. Yes, before you get to the part stuff. Now, the beautiful thing is this is all connected, right? So that's my personal, I like the regulation piece because you're already learning to connect to yourself in creating regulation. And that way, when you're here, you can come to a place of regulation, find yourself, and offer, like, okay, can I connect to this part of me now? Right. So I prefer nervous system regulation first, and it's used all throughout. But even in the nervous system regulation, the way I blend it with parts work is we're still able to recognize parts of ourselves while we're doing it. It's just each piece builds on top of the next, on top of the next, if that makes sense. Okay. So with a hand on heart, just for a moment, whatever you notice, say a part of me is feeling whatever you're feeling, and it makes sense. And just notice what that feels like. Maybe practice telling yourself it's safe to feel this. It's safe to feel whatever I feel. I don't need to judge it or figure it out. And if you do notice a part of yourself, maybe even say to that part of you, I see you. I get it's hard. And just notice if it feels safe to be in your body. If it doesn't, please be mindful of that. But if it does feel safe, maybe notice if there's any shift or change as you're connecting to whatever you're noticing. Okay, you started uh, stuff from anxiety. Okay, is regulate nervous system regulation means your nervous system is in a regulated state. So you're able to have more flexibility in your nervous system where you're not stuck in survival mode. You can access sympathetic when you need it, but you have more agency and you can come back to feeling more grounded. Okay. Yeah. So it's not about just going into the body and not escaping your thoughts. It's much more than that. It's building a felt sense of safety into the body. Okay. How do you tell the difference between whether it's a part or an emotion? Really great question. So Parts have emotions. Like if I'm noticing a sensation in my body, it's a part of me feeling a sensation. If I notice an emotion, it's a part of me feeling this emotion. Same thing. It's just whatever works for you and how you connect. So if you connect your emotion, you can still work with that emotion directly using parts work. This is a piece. If you struggle with feeling, getting in touch with emotions, then it's telling me that there are really deep protector parts that are keeping you disconnected from your body, right? That there's some of this nervous system regulation work to be able to do. And that's why it comes first. Answering that question again, this is why it often comes first before we're going into parts work. Yeah. So let's dive into self compassion work. So some of the commonly held beliefs with self-compassion is this is what I hear. It'll make me weak. It's going to make me complacent. I'm going to get lazy and I'm not going to do anything. Self-compassion is so cheesy, right? So cheesy. I just can't do it. Self-compassion is me making excuses. It's me just saying it's okay that I'm not doing anything. That's definitely not self-compassion. That's something else, but not self-compassion. We have a lot of negative associations with self-compassion, your inner critics especially. So let's talk about this. The truth is that self-compassion creates safety. So real change can happen. It is very much connected to regulating your nervous system, to accessing your true self. And the reason self-compassion feels really hard is likely because your inner critic is really strong and wants to shame you to keep you safe. And parts of you feel you aren't deserving of your care. And so we want to work through the resistance to self-compassion and work with the parts that are resisting self-compassion, notably your inner critic, because the parts resisting self-compassion are stuck in survival mode. And when you can access self-compassion, you're coming into more regulation in your system. So let me go with the research because I love research. Research has shown that self-compassion is the most, I repeat, the most essential piece in building healthy and stable self-esteem. And it's an essential piece of regulating your nervous system. Self-compassion allows you to ground and access the parasympathetic branch of your nervous system, which means it's the branch that helps to regulate you, to help bring you out of that fight, flight place. It helps to make you feel safe. Self-compassion helps you to see the larger picture because you can access your true self. It isn't just a feeling, and I want to be really mindful of this. It's a relational act towards yourself. You are befriending yourself. You're wiring for connection instead of protection. Every single time you practice self-compassion, you are wiring your system for connection instead of protection. And all of those moments add up and end up rewiring these old inner critic patterns like they did for me. Self-compassion allows you to befriend yourself and all of your parts, and it requires skill and practice. And it's one of the foundations we all have as humans because it is that core part of the self. And this is what I love about self-compassion. It allows you, and this is the biggest thing, right? I want to really debunk this myth that it kind of makes us lazy and complacent and just be like, okay with where I'm at. That's not self-compassion. That's something else. That's another protective part that might be unmotivated, that might be trying to keep you stuck so that you don't take the risk of doing something that could lead to failure or rejection. That's not self-compassion, right? That's you in survival mode. Self-compassion is you in a regulated state. And when you're in a regulated state, self-compassion literally activates your motor cortex in the brain. This is the part of the brain that says, get up, body, go do that thing you want to do. You got this. So it motivates you through trust and encouragement instead of shame and fear. Because what we've seen today is that shame and fear are actually going to shut the brain down from being able to create anything new. So over time, your system is just going to feel locked in on motivation and being frozen, right? Immobilized instead of being able to go for the things that you want. And let's just look at what it does in the prefrontal cortex. Self-compassion brings your logic brain back online so your system can feel safe enough to heal and move forward. And that means the amygdala gets calmed down and it goes offline. So your threat system isn't being activated as much or at all, and you're not in survival mode. And so we end up seeing this positive feedback loop. Remember the negative feedback loop I was sharing before around the inner critic and survival mode. The self brings connection And the more you are connected to yourself and all the parts, and you know how to work with yourself and regulate, the more of your true self shines and the more you get to know who you really are. And my clients and students in the Befriending Your Parts either come to me with resistance to self compassion, or they come to me feeling like I never finished that sentence. Let me finish it. They either come to me with resistance to self compassion, or they come to me saying, like, oh, I really love self compassion, not recognizing their resistance to self compassion. Because every single person I've ever worked with has found that they have major resistance once they kind of recognize it. And they've also developed unbelievable healing when they learned the actual skills of self compassion, myself included. And so I'm hoping that what this has been able to kind of show you is how just interwoven nervous system healing, parts work, and self compassion are. Like in every single piece of this, the other two are present because they literally go together. So important. So let's talk about 3 tips to cultivate self-compassion. Just for a moment, sometimes when it's really hard to, and this is just the very basic essence of self-compassion work, but I wanted to give you something, so I'd like to give you tips. Just imagine how you'd speak to a dear friend. And it's a dear friend because it's somebody that hopefully you don't have any attachment wounds with. There's no hurt. It's just a dear friend. Speak to yourself in that way. Validate, even call their essence into like yourself and be like, what would they say right now? Let me say that to myself. Compassion doesn't excuse behavior. It makes space for understanding. So we want to be able to say, it makes sense. It makes sense that I'm feeling this way. Again, to place the hand on your chest or abdomen while you speak to yourself kindly, because this signals to the survival brain and nervous system, we're safe enough to soften. And then imagine a real compassionate person holding space for you and embody that. So this may be a higher power if you're spiritual. This may be a human being if you have one. This may be a dog. If you have a dog, I know they give so much unconditional love. This may be a beautiful place in nature that you just feel like you release. This helps the body to release the survival responses and regulate. So let's try this for a moment. Hand on chest. Notice again if there's a part. Maybe it's the same part you had noticed before. Maybe this is a new part. Maybe name, if you notice the part, there's a part of me feeling, and continue to fill in that sentence. And the important thing as you learn more effectively to do this work is it's not just saying things to yourself, it's connecting to the body. Because what we'll notice is if I say to myself, right, there's a part of me feeling, I will immediately start to notice that I'm disconnecting enough that I can really hold compassion, and I'm finding myself again, and I can hold space for this, and then I can work with whatever's happening. I can say to this part, I get that this is hard. I can say I'm here. And I will literally notice a softening. Sometimes you'll notice parts that are really resistant with you. And I can't go into all of that right here today. That is the work we do in the Befriending Your Parts framework, is how to work with resistant parts, what to do, how to get them out of their extreme roles. For the purpose of today, I do want to kind of give you the essence, little things and pieces that you can work with. And so now I want to offer you an invitation. For those of you, I know some of you are very interested in the Befriending Your Parts framework. If you feel ready to heal your self-esteem and come out of survival mode, I wanted to put a little question in there that made like a big, like a Russell Brunson, if any of you know who he is. He's very show me the money kind of guy. Are you ready to heal your self-esteem and come out of survival mode? But that's just not really my style. So I ask it a little bit more gently. What you've learned today is the 3 core strategies, right? You've learned about nervous system regulation, parts work, self-compassion. You've learned how they all intertwine. And now you know you need a full system approach that helps you heal at the root, potentially. That's what I'm assuming. I'm assuming you knew. And so I want to introduce to you the Befriending Your Parts framework. This is a trauma-informed, evidence-based approach to healing that's rooted in these 3 approaches. And it has been an incredible experience over the years of building this. I built this initially just to help my students or my clients at the time, because I hadn't even started the international program, but it was to help my clients heal faster. And the results were so wildly incredible that I decided to make it an international thing. And initially, I was just selling the course material, and then we developed this whole community, and then it developed coaching calls, and it's just turned into this really magical, beautiful thing that I'm so, so deeply grateful for. And I want to give you a few case studies here. So let me introduce Kim. Before Kim joined the Befriending Your Parts framework, she was always anxious. She had really strong inner critics. She wasn't able to build her business, which she was really wanting to build. And that's why she initially was coming in. She's like, my anxiety and my low self-esteem are getting in the way. Her mind was always ruminating. She really struggled to make friends, and some of the friends in her life weren't really great ones, right? For her, she was feeling really alone. She had a strong fight part. So there was a part of her that was really angry. And sometimes she would like, I just lose it and I get so mad and I lash out. She was feeling like a terrible mother, terrible wife, terrible daughter, terrible sister. Now, after working with me, she gave me a review after 6 months. You can see that in my testimonials. And then she gave a review after 1 year. And I want to give after 1 year because I think that's a really realistic, this is not a quick fix. If you're here today and anybody's telling you that in 9 weeks or in 3 months that you can be a completely different, that they just don't have experience in what they're doing, plain and simply. And that's a big problem with the coaching industry right now. There's a lot of people out there with no background in what they're doing. They've just had a really good chat GPT. Okay. This is a process. Now, what I love to tell you is that this isn't a year like you're going back to school. If you can listen to 30 minutes a week, you're golden. You can take a month off. You're still rewiring with what you're learning. That's the beautiful, beautiful thing of this work. It is meant to take slow. You'll get greater results that way. So what she's noticed is much less anxiety. Her inner critics are manageable. She knows how to work with them. She's feeling good about who she is. She's proud of herself. She's feeling more at peace. She's made several new and amazing friends, which is so amazing. She knows she has good people in her life who are there for her. She can feel her anger without fighting, right? And her anger now, she understands her anger. She knows how to work with that part of her. She can recognize her strengths. Her inner critic never let her do that in the past. And most importantly for her, she's been able to become the entrepreneur she dreamed of. She's booked out this entire summer. I just found that out from her. She is booked out completely. And I'm just so in awe. Let's look at another example here. Let's look at Janet. So Janet came always anxious. And I remember in our first session, she told me, I just don't see a day where I'm ever going to like myself. She said she felt like she didn't know how to be a human being. She always felt hurt by other people. So she really isolated herself. She had trouble leaving the house. She had not been to any large gatherings in years. She felt terrible about herself. And she wasn't working because it was just feeling so overwhelming. Now, this was after a year. And of course, people start noticing gains all throughout, but I just like to give you the realistic 1 year later, right? Your anxiety is manageable. She told me she feels happy most of the time, and I cried. I literally just started bawling my eyes out on the moment. I was so happy for her because I know, I know what life was like for her before this. She feels good about herself and is able to recognize her strengths. She's working with the part of her that is afraid of losing the progress now, because that's the thing. What people will notice is sometimes there's this part that's fearful of, it's like, oh my God, I now know what it's like to feel this good. Oh my God, when's the ball going to drop? And so that's been a part she's now learning to do the same work she did with the inner critic and the anxious part she's doing with this very specific part about losing her progress. She's gone to several large events, including a wedding. She's learned to set boundaries with unhealthy family members. She's using the BYP approach to help her young adult children. And this has been really huge for her because she's been seeing how quickly, because they're younger, right? They're late teens, early 20s, how quickly it's helping them with these tools. So she has been teaching them and having them watch certain videos, really powerful. And so let's just take a moment once again, just to imagine that from the beginning, like I brought this from the beginning, to imagine what it would feel like to feel better, to even have a moment like any of those just two of many examples I could give you, what that would be like for you to be on that end. And just take a moment and see if you can just imagine that. And you may have resistance and it may feel impossible. But my message for you today is that it's not impossible. I once thought it was impossible for me too. Let's look at, I'm going too fast here, the 2 tiers. So here's what this work will support you with. Okay, you're going to learn how to calm your survival responses and feel more freedom. You're going to learn how to shift your nervous system state. You'll finally understand and work with your inner critic and all the protective parts. You're going to learn to really understand them, have compassion for them, work with them, take them out of the extreme roles they're in. You'll heal the parts that need your care, like these attachment wounds. You'll learn to have healthy relationships and navigate healthy conflict. You're going to learn healthy boundary setting. You're going to learn true compassion, self-compassion, and how to build trust in yourself. And you're going to learn how to stop the internal battle so that you can feel safe being you. That sounds like a lot, but this is actually just a few pieces in a nutshell of the depth of the amazing work that's done there. And really how this is done is just video modules. This is the option one. This is the most popular. There are guided practices, there's reflection, exercises, and there's workbooks. You have access to the Befriending Your Parts community for support, guidance, and to ask questions. And let me tell you, I come in and give very detailed step-by-step answers to your questions. There's also the live weekly Q&A coaching call with me where you can ask one question and I answer it. You can come with cameras off. You can come just putting your question in the weekly form that I have you complete if you want to. It's optional. And that's where you put your question in. You can choose to talk. You can choose not to and just be in the chat box. It is so easygoing, and that's why people love it and people connect so well on there. And then, of course, the benefit is you have access to all of the paid live webinars that I do. I post all of them in my community, which is wonderful. And so usually option one, there's options of $199 monthly for 3 months of weekly coaching calls and 6 months access to the course material and community. It's $699. And for 6 months of weekly coaching calls plus 1 year of access to the course material and community is $13.99. However, right now, $5.99 for 3 months of weekly coaching calls plus 6 months access to the course material. And it's $10.99 for 6 months weekly coaching calls plus 1 year access to the course material and community. So I'm just going to ask you for a moment to think about this because the investment on June 1st is going up by 30% on these just because of the amount of work that I do give to each person in the community when you join. But think about for that investment, even that feels like a lot, to be able to get everything that you would be getting and being able to look back a year from now at all of your gains. It's huge. It's a steal. And for the next 2 days only, you can have access to all of the course material for either 1 year for $3.99 USD, or you can get lifetime access to all of the course material and all of the updates that I'm always doing for $5.99 USD. So you would not have the coaching calls, but you would have access to the course material. Now, option two is you get everything in option one, plus one-on-one calls with me for the utmost support for me. A lot of people don't need this. The majority of people are finding they're getting what they need from that weekly coaching call and being able to be there. And then sometimes there's pieces that they want to do a little bit more work on. And so they contact me. There's no set support around this. This is just really ideal for those of you who want a lot of support in your healing journey. And so we could really talk about what that looks like. Often that just looks like, hey, Chantal, I'd really like to book a session now. And then we book a session. And I just get people to be mindful that I'm usually booked up for at least 7 to 10 days in advance between my therapy clients and my one-on-one calls with the Befriending Your Parts framework. So it's just to make sure to kind of book in, think about like 2 weeks in advance when you want to book a call. And some people like to do more scheduled calls, and that's up to them too. It just depends on what you're wanting. Some people too really just want to get the course material and have the one-on-one coaching. That's also an option as well. So you kind of get to choose your own adventure. Just going to make sure I answer this question. Oh, you're so welcome. You're so welcome. And so usually, once again, that option two is very much the same thing, right? So it just comes back to how this would work is for option three, you would just invest in option option one, or you would just buy the course material and then we would talk about what it looks like to work together. And so I wanted you to know this. You're not stuck because something's wrong with you. I want to be really mindful of that. This is the biggest underlying thing I hear from clients and students. There's nothing wrong with you. You're stuck because no one ever taught you how to work with what's going on underneath. And that's what you're here to do. And so some part of you, right, is here today wanting to learn more about that. And this is really the work of reclaiming your self-esteem. I like to say reclaiming your self-esteem, not by fixing yourself. You don't need fixing, you're not broken, but by working with what your system already knows, right? You're trying to help your system rewire to go back to what it essentially has the capacity to know is coming back to your true self. And so if this resonates with you and you're feeling ready, I like to just make this so simple, like literally send me a DM with ready. If you don't know what to say and you just like, I want to know more or I want to understand, send me a DM with ready and I'll reach out to chat. And there's absolutely no pressure. This is just an honest chat about whether this is right for you. And if it makes sense for us to jump on a 20-minute chat just to really kind of answer any questions or figure out anything for you, I'm happy to do that too, especially if you're interested in the option one or option two. And if you already know, you're like, this course material sounds amazing. By the way, it is. But I mean, I love the course material. Obviously, it's been my baby, so I'm a big fan of it. But if you just want the course material, what I'm going to be doing is sending you tomorrow morning an email to all of you, just with the links to direct like purchase with the specials. So you can just go and directly purchase if you already know, like, this is what I want to do. I'm clear on it. If I want the course material, you can just go. There's going to be two options, one for the 1-year access and one for the lifetime access. And you can just go for it. And if you have questions for me, reach out with ready. I want to take a moment here and really just thank you to all of you for being here today with me, because this is huge. You know, it's a huge step. It's saying a lot. And I'm here if any of you guys have any questions right now before we say goodbye. I know we've been here for a long time. Oh, you're so welcome. You're so welcome. You're so welcome. If you have any questions, you're welcome, Hannah. You're welcome, Elaine. Just send me a message. This is what I'm here for. Remember, just message me ready. I'm so happy you're all here. Thank you all so much. And I'm wishing you a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful evening. And I'll look forward to hearing from some of you. Bye, guys. Thanks for coming.